I'm going to quickly go over some things that were presented in the first jam session, and then I'll present some new things. And as we go through this, what I'd like for you to do is, if you have projects you're working on that you're thinking of applying the things we're talking about, then be thinking about the things you think are most applicable or things you have questions about. And then at the end, what we can do is apply these concepts, directly to your projects, because it's, without having something to apply it to, they can be kind of abstract and not very helpful. So being able to apply them to something, is the best way we can use our time, I think. So I will share my screen now. Again, it might take me a little while. All right, here we go. Okay. All right, so I'm Dr. Leah Gibbons, and here are my organizations I'm representing, as well as email addresses where you can get in touch with me. And I'll show this again at the end, so don't feel like you have to scramble to write this down. Of course, it's recorded also. Okay, and so we're still going through just sort of regenerative, sustainability, development, design fundamentals to get our bearings, and I'll be using similar language. So last time I talked about how regenerative development, and even this concept of regeneration, we need to have a foundation in regenerative sustainability, which I defined as the condition of a whole living system in which health and well-being increase continuously. So we can state this succinctly as the thrivability and abundance of whole living systems. And then that regenerative development then is the process of developing the capabilities of whole living systems to increase continuously in health and well-being. And this is the human part of that process. So humans then need to align our consciousness and actions with living systems principles and characteristics in order to enable those capabilities to develop and that health and well-being to manifest. And so this is in comparison to sustainable development, which is typically defined as meeting the needs of present generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. So it's a really fundamental difference of meeting needs in sustainable development versus we're trying to manifest thrivability for all life in regenerative development. And then regenerative design is our system of methodologies, strategies, and technologies to manifest regenerative development and sustainability. And this is a process that happens across scales. So even though we have specific projects we're working on, the projects are embedded within these larger systems of community, landscape, city, and so on. And so one of the principles of regenerative development is that we are enabling the capability of systems to manifest thrivability upscale as well as downscale, even as we're working on our project. So let's say we're working on a project that's essentially at a site scale, like let's say an individual, farm that we're working on. We want to look at how that farm is embedded within the larger community, within the larger landscape, and so on, to see how can that farm be a mechanism that can enhance thrivability at those larger scales. And also we're looking at how we can help manifest thrivability across time as well. So in this graphic, this is helping us see that our projects are contextualized within those geographical scales, from individual through city and region, and even beyond globally, and also across time. So things in the past throughout time and geographically have led to the conditions, where we are now. So we're going to look at those and see how we got to where we are, and also be looking into the future at the same time that we're looking across scales. And this tool, the integral perceiving tool, also helps us look at all the components that compose a living system and the things that are interacting to determine their state of health and well-being, or their state of regeneration. So it helps us with our, quite honestly, limited brain capacities, in complex systems, which involve a number of components that we can't really deal with our limited brains. It helps us look at some of those main components of the system that determine its health and well-being, like food and energy and nutrients and water and so on, and look at how they're flowing across scales and how they're interacting with those flows. Because in regenerative development, we're really concerned about these flows, since living systems are composed of the flows of its components and their relationships, which we'll look at in a minute. So this kind of a tool can help us see what those most important flows are and how they're interacting across scales. So if we're using our farm example, that could be at the site scale here, we probably are very interested in the flow of water in the farm. And so we want to look at how is that water flowing from our farm into the larger community and neighborhood, into the watershed. That's a larger scale also. We want to look at how obviously food is flowing, because that's what we're producing. So how is food flowing from our site to those larger scales of community, watershed, region, and so on? You know, how are nutrients flowing? Are we losing any nutrients out of our farm into the community and watershed scale? And if we are, what are the impacts of those? How are the nutrients flowing into our farm? You know, so these are some of the flows we're looking at, and those are just a few examples. And then last time we talked about the main principles of regenerative living systems. So the meta principles being wholeness, change, and relationship. All right, so in very simple terms, we can say that all living systems are whole, they're constantly changing, and they only exist because of the relationships of the components in those living systems. And if we want to break these down into smaller principles that's more useful to deal with, we can say that living systems always function as wholes. So we have this tendency as humans to try to fragment things, which is one piece of the picture, but we need to integrate it back into the wholeness and to really understand it as a whole living system, as a regenerative system. So that's the human component. We need to be able to think holistically rather than completely in fragments. So with the change principle, we need to understand that this process of change is manifesting potential constantly, and it's developing regenerative capacity. So the capacity to increase continually in health, well-being, and vitality. That's what the change is for, essentially. Then the relationships in living systems are always value adding. So in other words, you know, the relationships serve to increase the health and well-being of the whole constantly. So that's the value adding component. And the smaller scales are serving to increase the health and well-being of the larger scales. Another type of relationship is a mutualism guild. Again, this idea that the relationships are, you know, positive, mutually positive and reciprocal. And the final one that's really important is nodal leverage points. So we're shifting the health of our systems by being able to look at where a lot of flows converge and how we can make changes at those nodal convergence points where we can influence the health of the entire system. So for example, food is a great one, and that's why I'm using a farm as an example, because so much of our lives, you know, integrate food and converge at food as a nodal leverage point, you know, water, nutrients, energy, a lot of our cultural practices, you know, they converge around food. So we can shift this food leverage point and shift a lot of other points in the system. Okay, and then we talked about core characteristics of healthy living systems. So regenerative living systems, you know, have these characteristics. So the things you're probably already familiar with are things like diversity, right? We need a good amount of diversity and different kinds of diversity for our system to be healthy. And there is kind of a magic diversity point. If we have too much diversity, then the relationships that are necessary for a healthy living system can't be as strong, and the system will move towards less diversity. But if we have too little diversity, then it's also not going to be healthy. So the system will move towards more diversity. We also need our systems to be multifunctional and redundant and flexible and adaptable. There are a lot of other characteristics here that are important. And since we went over them last time, I'm not going to go through each one, but you can come back to this video. Sorry about that. Come back to this video and look at these. Some of the ones you might be interested in right now are things like connectedness and flow, which I talked about, reciprocity. For the human part of these systems, we really need to develop skills of long-term thinking and reflection, holistic thinking, collaboration, and responsibility. Okay, and so here's new material. So these, from those regenerative characteristics and principles, we can come up with indicators, right, that will tell us whether or not our system is becoming more or less regenerative. Okay, and so systems are always in this process of becoming, right? And so they're becoming either more regenerative or less regenerative. And the indicators will help us know, which direction our system is moving in. So we can use things like, to what degree is the system self-organizing? To what degree is it able to be adaptive? To what degree is emergence occurring? To what degree is, complexity increasing, and so on. We want to look at things like cycles, are things cycling like they should be? Because in nature, if things aren't flowing, so cycling is another word for flowing. If things aren't flowing, then the system, is basically dying. So we need things to flow. And again, like this flow rate needs to be specific for our system and healthy for our system. So all these things are like general indicators that then we're going to make very specific for our exact project, our exact place, our exact time, because every living system is different, and every living system has different requirements for what's going to make it optimally healthy and regenerative. So these indicators are a good place for us to start and look at what are the things we need to be looking at for our system to see if it's healthy. And this might not be all of the indicators. We can add more. These are just some general indicators that will apply, to most projects we're looking at. I do want to draw attention to things like a sacred view of all life, humans as producers, not consumers, developing skills of compassion and empathy, responsibility, positive reciprocity, and also meaningful existence in relationship to place. Okay, so these more human components of systems are especially important to develop since, like I talked about last time, humans are such powerful agents of change in living systems, and we have we do have immediate impacts. Of course, on small scales, and on larger scales, we have impacts that are visible in slightly longer time scales, but even so, we're having impacts at a very quick rate compared to the more natural, non-human kinds of changes that occur. So we need to be very aware of how we're acting in the living systems we're a part of and in the communities we're a part of. And developing these kinds of characteristics and qualities within ourselves is what's really going to make regeneration happen. And you can see some more down there, like increasing understanding of place, willingness to change, deep care, will and action, strong sense of place and belonging, collaboration, including multiple points of view, innovation and social learning. So these have all been shown to be very, very important in shifting social systems so that they can align more with natural principles, natural system principles, and enable regeneration. I want to call out this one piece, the meaningful existence in relationship to place, because a lot of times people think that like we need everyone to just have sort of a living wage, to just be lifted up out of poverty. And yes, that's important. But what's even more important is that we are actually doing that in a way that fulfills us, right? That gives us meaning and purpose in our life that we enjoy. So, a lot of people but we need that meaningful purpose.
You're cutting off, Leah, a little bit.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, strategies. Okay, so then from the indicators, once we develop our place-based indicators, we can come up with strategies for how are we going to meet those indicators. And again, these are going to be place-based. So these are general strategies, and then we'll make them place-based. So we have our guiding consciousness, which is things like, using holistic approaches. So instead of just fragmented approaches, we want to see how all of our approaches are going to fit together across social and ecological dimensions to create our entire living system. We need to understand that design shifts worldviews. So as we're going through processes in our projects to design them, to manifest them, right? These are great opportunities to shift worldviews, and they should be approached as such. We need to be using things like ecological design and lifting up indigenous knowledge and practices. So, going back to our roots of indigenous knowledge and practices is super important. Let's see. We need to have like ongoing. What?
Sorry, it's just your voice sometimes leaves. So
okay, sure. I'll try to make this better. We need to have ongoing reflective community dialogue and social learning. So social learning is when we're, as a group, making collective changes in how we think about things. And that would be reflected in things like community documents or, cultural shifts that we can observe. And this is really important for any kind of, community change and change at larger scales. Let's see. Up on the top right, things like rituals and celebrations based around healthy living systems functioning are especially important, because when that starts to normalize behaviors and ways of thinking, and you can tie this back to indigenous knowledge and practices, right? Like there are a lot of nature-based celebrations and rituals, and even just daily, ways we go about our lives that are integrated into indigenous practices. So we can look at those and we can create new ones, okay, for our communities and the way we do things that will help us just connect to nature and understand its importance. We need equity and inclusivity, so that's another part of manifesting diversity is equity and inclusivity. We need local economies. Again, this idea of satisfying and purposeful livelihoods. What else is important here? If we see at the bottom things like polycentric governance, so this goes along with being more decentralized and having hierarchies. So hierarchies it's kind of a mix of being totally decentralized and being hierarchical, where we understand that there are certain instances where we do need like a bit of a hierarchy, even though we need to have input from the bottom up in those types of hierarchies. We sometimes do need like the structure of larger organizational scales or the decision-making ability of larger organizational scales. And so that's hierarchy, kind of puts the best of those two things together. Let's see. Yeah, and then we need a good mix of long-term and short-term goals also, of course, to make anything work. Okay, so this is, pretty much it for today. So what I wanted to do was we can move between these slides so you can kind of look at the strategies, you can look at the indicators, or if you need to look at the characteristics and principles, we can look at those. And I wanted just to, take a stab at applying some of these things to your projects. Again, so it's not just all like theoretical and like high level thinking. We want to apply this to what we're doing. So I'm going to take it off screen share for just a minute so we can just see each other and talk. And stop share. Okay. There we go. So we can, I'm sorry you can't see me again, but next time. Yeah, so if anyone has just any comments for right now, or you want to know more about any of these things, because I did just sort of breeze through them, then feel free to ask questions and I can go more in depth, or we can just start applying some of these things to your projects.
I have a question in regards to what you were explaining about hierarchy.
Uh-huh.
It's a more of a leadership, meaning that some people are going to take more like a leader role, but it doesn't mean they are the sole leaders of the project or the campaign. Or is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's a good example. I can get into this more in the next jam session because it's useful to show illustrations for how this works. But you can imagine, let's see. Let's say in a business, like a for-profit business. Let's say that people, you maybe have a core team of people who started it. Let's say it's like 5 people. And the way they structured it, they want this to really be like an employee-owned business, or even maybe community-owned, with a lot of input from the community, from the employees about what the business should be doing. But they still have a vision, right? Like a guiding vision for what they want the business to be doing. So there's this interplay of getting input and direction from what we would call the lower scales, right? Even though there's no subjective judgment when I say lower, it's just purely about the organizational levels. So the community, the employees, they could set up a system so there's a certain degree of control and input from those levels, even though at the highest levels of operating the company, right, those 5 core team members would have ultimate, decision-making ability, because ultimately they are responsible for the community, for the company. Like legally, they're responsible. So they need to be able to have, certain decision-making privileges and control about what the company does. So that's an example.
Okay. And in regards to, I think you put, could you bring the slide back? Yeah. You mentioned, there is,
okay, which one do you want to see?
The last one we saw.
Okay.
Yeah,
Strategies.
I'm sorry, no, the one prior. In relationships, okay. Or maybe, yeah, because I'm sure once projects and people start living together and ecosystems starting to get created, relationships are different. They start changing. Mm-hmm. Do you consider there should be like resolution, like how to deal with like issues? Would that be part of the relationships, or it would be part more of a strategy instead of being an indicator? Maybe you have it already.
I would put that, let me see at the strategies level.
Yeah, like in actions, maybe?
I would put that either in community building, probably in community building and governance. Okay. And you're right, I don't have anything really specific to communication, but that is very important. You're right, and I should probably add that in here. Yeah. Things like, I have it in like worldviews, like compassion and empathy and things, but I totally see your point that learning to express these things in our communication is very important. So even our communication, is a reflection of our thinking, of course. So
yeah, that could be in the circles section you have as well. There's a section you have circles and gatherings where people can express themselves or communicate their, like in the rituals.
Yeah, rituals.
But more, like how do they express, how the community will express when something's not going well or something's changing. If something's not going well, is perhaps there need to be a change. There needs to be an upgrade. So that's what I'm
So, and you see under actions, I have ongoing reflective community dialogue and learning. So this could be part of that, but I see even there could be levels of this as well. Like you could have daily check-ins, weekly, monthly, and they could be about different things, from simple little things like just how we're getting along to really important community decisions, like big level decisions, you know, like what should we do with those 5 acres over there, you know, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it helpful to have like, hey Leah, I'm Justin. Hi, Justin. I'm in Colorado, so just outside Denver, and so have been working with seeds for about 2 years now, and have been kind of, I think you mentioned at exploring hierarchical leadership, or we've been trying out, like we've been playing with the words like synarchy and syntropic, but they're a little bit ahead of our actual capabilities and abilities. Cool. But they're ideal right now, and so really appreciate both the breakdown of kind of the, well, just not just of the principles, but actually kind of seeing the principles being broke down into strategies, because I think a lot of times finding ways to actionably be regenerative is really a challenge, or to help people kind of embody beyond the global social kind of context that you find in seeds, or other ways that kind of theoretical, and bringing it into daily practices, which are pretty important for an embodied expression and relationship with the land that is kind of this regenerative practice. And just kind of, that's me kind of proselytizing, I guess, but also just celebrating the structure that you're bringing in the way that it is. My question is something like, so our challenge, or our opportunity right now, say some mix between the both of them, is that we've been operating in a pretty much in Samara Trust, or Samara Sanctuary Studios, but really Samara Trust, pretty much been 8 dedicated members. We just kind of had a vote last week to officially ratify, or however you want to call that, like to vote everyone in as members, which is a very simple process that we've been trying to get to, for trying to actually kind of feel we've achieved for months. And, you know, the last week was the first time where we did it, and it actually felt very true and concrete. And so we've done kind of a great job of bridging this.
Justin, we lost it.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm probably saying a lot of things really fast as well. So let me try to say it. I'll try to speak slowly and also get to my kind of be more concise. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
All right, cool. So let me try.
Hey, Justin, beautiful voice.
Hey, Nadeem. So we've been doing the work in a digital kind of in the digital, and now we're really kind of working on grounding it into place-based, not just space-based, I guess is a differentiator there. We've been holding these spaces and facilitating this process that it feels very aligned. Regenerative practices of listening, learning, and leading. And now we're kind of getting into this into more of the land. And I guess my question was, we have kind of 2 projects. One is in Guatemala, a project called Tuk Tuk. And so we're looking at how do you kind of bring there's already this regenerative ethos in this Mayan people, and also in the nature of this land-based project, but the learning and the practice of bridging the digital and the physical has been really a challenge, because we're also dealing with like socio-cultural senses of ownership, language barriers. Like when you bring the word hierarchy, how do you translate hierarchy into Spanish, or even bring it closer to, like, I think it's to the language that they often speak. And I'm a little bit far from the project. I'm like 2 steps away, but I know it's some mix of Mayan and Spanish language. And so there's a little bit of a even deeper translation that has to happen. And so the way that we teach or facilitate practices of ownership and relationship and governance and coordination is really kind of complex there. And so that's kind of one aspect of what I'm wondering is how can we, beyond the language, have you seen ways that you've been able to kind of bring or bridge these guiding consciousness or this kind of governance to people, and also kind of hybrid environments. And then if I said it in a more close to home way, it's the same kind of question. There's 3 of us now, and we're looking at kind of securing pretty much a 47-acre plot of land. It's got an 8-bedroom home. And the idea is that we're really looking to develop what we're calling a safe haven, or a sanctuary studio, but this one's called Safe Haven. And it's a place for people to come and kind of step out of, the fringe or edges of United States society and find ways to kind of rehabilitate themselves, recover from addictions of all kinds, and really be able to connect to the land in a way that allows them to step into regenerative practices. And so even then, there's a little bit of I notice an educational gap of how do I translate very complex ideas like equity or polycentrism, or into ways that those that maybe don't have a deep understanding of of not just that maybe are less educated or have there's language barriers, bridging the socio-cultural gap, whether that be because of being in different countries or because of access to education and kind of even capacity of neurological capacity because of drugs and these kind of things. Like how have you seen a way, or do you know practices, or is there something about the practice that you have that we could use or learn from? That's kind of our question I'm bringing to you. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So there is a whole process with this regenerative community development as well that applies not just for what you might think of as a community, but for any regenerative process. And so part of that process is, we come to a situation humbly, like we're not the experts, we're there to serve, and we bring a certain lens, we bring a certain way of thinking and interacting with the world that, like you're pointing out beautifully, doesn't always align very well with the communities we want to serve. So our role then, and our responsibility, is to try to understand them as much as possible, understand their culture, their community, how they think about things, the knowledge and wisdom that they already have, that, a lot of times is very much in alignment actually with this kind of more like scientific approach, let's call it, right? And so there are other ways outside of science of describing these concepts, like same concepts, but different terminology. And so it's upon us as practitioners of regenerative development and design to be the bridge, to seek to understand the communities we're working with and serving, and then communicate to them in ways that they will understand about these concepts. So, we might not use the word guild, or we might not use the word polycentric governance or decentralized. I'm sure they have concepts that are the same. And so then we can describe what it is without labeling it. And they'll say, oh yeah, that's how we do this. And then we'll learn their terminology, and we'll start to learn, their thinking. And what we can do then is just lift up, practices that they already have that are regenerative. And so that's really the best way to do it. Like, I have not ever worked with a group that doesn't have some level of regenerative thinking and practices there, but maybe they're not expressing it very well, or it's not very coordinated, or they've put those on the back burner in favor of some different practices. And so again, it's like our role to understand them and be the bridge and lift up their knowledge. And if we do need to introduce some new concepts, we definitely can, but we want to keep the language accessible for them. So again, like however we think about these things and the terms that we label them with, that's fine, but that might not work, right, in those communities we're working with. So we need to be able to adapt and adjust. And that's part of us being regenerative too, as practitioners. We need to be regenerative. So we need to be flexible and adaptable, right, and be able to meet people where they are. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I don't know if this makes it, but what I was kind of feeling, because we're using the kind of idea of being facilitators, right? So we're facilitating these processes and facilitating these spaces, and in a way, facilitating these places, but really kind of also being facilitated by it all. Which I heard you say in a way, because like, I can come in and think that I know, but also I should be moved and changed by those that I work with, because they may have, by learning new language and learning more words, I also kind of grow in my understanding from the scientific, maybe to some kind of other, like a wisdom or some kind of different type of school of thought, I guess you could say, or structure of the world. But when you're doing what you're doing, Leah, the teaching of it's not really training the trainers, right? But it's like facilitating the facilitators to be able to facilitate the process. Or the practitioners. I wonder how do you like it? What do I wonder? It's like, I feel like I'm already at my edge in some way of understanding. And so my role is to help them understand, while also helping them understand the context of what they're working on. And so, even just that one person between myself and the women on the ground in Tuk kind of who are making the cacao is a really big gap. Sometimes it feels like, to really connecting and understanding what's happening in conversation, or what's happening with the land, and even the true connection or story that people hold. And I wondered, are there aspects of the strategy that you have, or kind of these kind of guiding cores that you could point to, as far as how can a leader hold hierarchical space and do so without being too disconnected from not only the land and people, but also while still allowing the people who you're kind of organizational kind of team members to also have the chance to figure it out on their own. I'm not, that wasn't really clear, but I'm trying to something about the distance and the spacing that's there.
Yeah. So a good way to think about it, like you said, we're facilitators, and we're facilitators of processes. Okay. So these processes of unfolding potential is what it really is. And I think I mentioned this last time, that like if you study unified field physics and that sort of thing, and the work of David Bohm, that he said that we have an implicate order and an explicate order. So the implicate order it's like the energetic blueprint that underlies what is manifest in physical form, and that includes things like our social systems as well. And so that implicate order, that like energetic blueprint, is always trying to manifest in form, and it's a process of unfolding that implicate order. And when we can get good at reading patterns in the manifested in the explicate order, so that we can like see what's coming, what's about to be manifested. Now, this is like high level regenerative facilitator and practitioner stuff, but it seems like it aligns with what you're talking about. Like, we're trying to help people in communities like just get back in touch with this way of knowing, because indigenous people, ancient cultures, they very much had this ability, and we've just lost it over time as we've become more industrialized and more separated from nature. So when we are in a community and we're facilitating these processes of unfolding, we're going to be training ourselves to get good at spotting this unfolding, this manifesting, and where change is coming from, and where it's going to manifest next. And a lot of this involves us like listening, like you're talking about, like when we go to the communities and we're with them, ask a lot of questions, try to understand how they understand things, understand their wisdom, understand their story of their place. And when we ask questions and we hear these stories, we'll be able to piece it all together eventually, like what has happened in this place, how people think about themselves here and their relationship to the rest of life, how they would like to see their community developing. And I don't know if that answered your question. So really asking a lot of questions and getting ourselves really in tune with what is happening, in this place, and seeing ourselves as an agent of the change that wants to manifest, because life always wants to express itself more. Like, life creates conditions conducive to life, period. And humans interrupt that. And so when we get back in tune with like life creating the conditions to create more life, then we become a partner with that process, a facilitator of that process. So does that make sense and answer your question?
Yeah, you make it, even there's a lot of complexity in what you're saying. You make it sound like simple and easy. I feel at ease with what you're saying to me, and then I'm also, so it's but it was a beautiful answer. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is simple, but it's not easy, because we have, in the industrialized, capitalistic world, we've lost these abilities, but we can get back in touch with them because it is our innate nature. Are there any other questions about specific projects or even just general things that I've talked about?
Yeah, you were talking about, you were kind of evolving into a higher facilitator way of seeing things within a community. Yeah. And I never heard that before. And I get it. It's like a simplistic way of seeing a community within like higher view, I guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know if it's the same. I don't know. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah. No, I think you're picking up on that correctly. And really this comes out of like decades of working with a living systems perspective and working in and with living systems. Like I started this kind of work when I was very, very young. It's an interesting story, but we don't have time for that now. But, I've got more than 3 decades, probably longer really, of being able to see in various ways what's happening in living systems. So for me, it's just like second nature, but we can train people to get back in touch with these abilities. Because like I said, it's innate for everyone. So yes, it is like a higher way of seeing a system. And we can translate this into spiritual terms as well. I think in a lot of indigenous groups, and this is something that might help as well, Justin, right? Like they're not going to use they're not going to use quantum physics or unified field physics terminology, but they'll have some language that describes the same things, and it'll be probably more spiritually based, right? So it's up to us to just like make those connections and see, oh yeah, they're using this language, but they're talking about this same thing that I'm talking about and the way I think about things. And then you just switch over and use their language because that's what they understand. So I am probably by the end of this week or early next week, I'll be putting out some information about regenerative community development training course that I'm offering if anyone's interested in taking that. And so what we'll do, it'll be a 20-week program, and we'll go through this entire framework I've developed, and we'll be applying it specifically to your project. And if you don't have one, you just want to learn this, you can be in a group with other people where you can work through this with their project. So you can learn this in a really grounded way, and you can learn it in a way it's almost like getting consulting, because I'll be helping you figure out how to apply this to the project, and you'll be applying it in real time. And in the end, you'll have something tangible to apply to your project. So whether that's a complete plan or the beginnings of a plan, it'll be something that you can take and use and continue to use and adapt, even after the course is over. Great. And also I just released Regenerative Leadership Program, which is very similar. It also teaches this framework, but it also teaches a lot of things more geared towards leadership and towards discovering like what is your specific role in the systems you're a part of. And your role being one that will, again, like add value to those systems. Like what is your unique role to play in this lifetime, right? To contribute positively to all of life. So that's what that program's about. And that's released. And I think I posted it on Seeds in the events and workshop channel. But it's also on the Koru Collaborative website. Yeah, and I'm really excited about that one. It has a really large spirituality component, and not everybody's comfortable with that, but
is really doing is it's getting you in touch with yourself, right? So you can hear yourself and hear like what's coming through. And it relates a lot to this process I was talking about of getting back in touch with our inherent abilities, you know, to be in communication with the rest of life and like what's happening there and what it wants to manifest. So, yeah.
Can you show that for the Corey Collaborative? Can you just name that URL? I'll type it in the chat.
Yeah. Okay. It's KORU collaborative.com/regenerative leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. I'm very, very honored to be in this space with you here. And I'm interested in participating in that program, especially, I don't know if you are aware of the Region Civics Alliance. We are there with the TAVI project, and maybe you'd like to collaborate with us in this project here, and I can learn from you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I submitted a project actually to that Regen Civics Alliance, and I'm interested in helping with that, helping guide the projects. Go ahead, Nadine.
Are you aware of the video we have to deliver end of the week? The pitch video.
I'm not sure I can actually do that, but I'm going to try.
Okay, if you need some support, we can help you.
Oh, thank you.
Well, we have a lot to do as well. Like I don't know if we will be delivering on time, but yeah, we have a team now, and maybe we can help. I really would love to have. And maybe you would like to share in the Discord server there if you need some editing skills, because I saw other projects, they have submitted their video already. So maybe they have time to help you now.
Okay, that's a nice idea. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. I definitely need like somebody with some graphic design skills.
Well, I can tell you, we have them here right now. We could give them to you if we are not busy with creating the video. So
lovely.
Yeah, maybe next week.
Yeah, I know we're all really busy, and it's life.
Thank you so much for the information and all your amazing downloads.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Is there anything you all would like to discuss or hear about next week?
This may be a little bit, I don't know how this fits into everything, but something about the nature of like, so we have these 47 acres of land. We're in this place. How can we use these kind of principles and strategies to actually know what the land itself or the place requires? Just maybe more like permaculture than like the actual kind of design, but something about the ability to like where to go and how to tune into, like, both scientifically and maybe spiritually tune into the actual needs of the land, so that we make sure we're not like coming and putting a bunch of hemp. It doesn't want a bunch of hemp, it's not trying to be that, or putting in a bunch of homes when it really wants to have this open field for something in the near future. So yeah, just how do we incorporate the place and the land into that process, or these kind of processes that you're showing?
Okay. If you have any information you want to send me about that 47 acres, I could look at it and then we could just talk specifically about that.
Cool.
And what I would need is like the address so we can see the larger context and any kind of like social information you can share, not just about the 47 acres, but the larger community as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, that'll be fun. I like applying these principles to projects way more than just talking about them abstractly. It's a lot more fun. So,
yeah, looking forward to it.
Okay, great. So hopefully I'll see you all next week, and yeah, we'll just continue. If you can email either of these addresses with anything, any suggestions for what you want to talk about in any of the jam sessions. I mean, I want this to be very much a co-created thing that will help people, not just me like talking at you.
Well, you talking at us is also very helpful. So thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.